a good overview of energy monitoring and and help you understand why you probably want one. In my mind, every single house should have one, and I'm hoping when I'm done, you'll agree with me. When we go to the grocery store, we get the receipt and we know exactly what everything on that receipt costs. You might spend a couple dollars on bananas, $10 on coffee, whatever, but you know exactly what each of those items cost. If next week you go to the grocery store and the price of bananas has doubled, you might say, okay, guys, this week we're going to eat oranges instead. But when we get our electric bill, we don't know what each of the components use that make up our electric bill. And a great example. Now just imagine if your dehumidifier normally used about $10 worth of electricity a month, and if it suddenly one month doubled to $20, your bill would go up by $10, and most of us would just pay it and move on because we have no idea why our bill changed $10. If it was a big jump, like $90, now we might track it down.
Downstairs.
Those smaller ups and downs of our electric bill, we just tend to absorb, and we have no idea what is behind them. This is a screenshot from my energy monitor. When I put it in, so I can see exactly how much every single thing in our house costs to run. And I can compare this from one month to the next pretty easily. So I'm going to show you how you can get this type of information, which is really so valuable when you're trying to manage your energy use and make decisions on what things need to be replaced and when. I'm going to just give a brief overview about installing one, so you understand that about the process and what's needed, configuration. We're going to just talk a little bit of high-level power energy, and I'll show you how to use the app, and then just some other things to consider as we're thinking about energy and what we can do with the information we get from an energy monitor. The one that we have chosen here in Vernon County is this Emporia Gen 2 View Energy Monitor. We like this monitor for several reasons. One is the price. It's $165 to get an energy monitor that will monitor 16 circuits in your breaker box. And one of the other things that we really like about this energy monitor is it is very flexible. The unit itself, you can add solar later. If you're a small business, maybe you've got 3-phase, you can get an extra CT and it'll monitor 3-phase power. This one monitor is very, very flexible. And for the price and the flexibility, we found this is really, I haven't seen anything as good yet. The other thing we like about them is these energy monitoring smart plugs that look kind of like this little smart plug, but it also monitors the energy use of whatever's plugged into it. And these can work together. I'll show you a little bit about how they complement each other. When I talking to folks and explain to them about getting an energy monitor, if you're comfortable, what I tell people is if you're comfortable replacing an outlet in the wall, you can probably install this. You're going into the breaker box. If going into the breaker box scares you, if you definitely get somebody to help you with it. But if you're, like I say, if you're comfortable replacing an outlet, you could probably do this on your own. They've got pretty good instructions, and so some of the tools you need, if you are going to install it, pretty basic stuff: screwdriver, gloves. You want a decent flashlight because when you turn the main breaker off, the lights aren't going to work, obviously. Some helpful tools that you may not have around the house is this circuit breaker finder. We've actually got one here in our energy district that folks can borrow. or or blow dryer if you're when you're trying to track down individual circuits. This does connect to your Wi-Fi, and it requires a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So you'll need to know your Wi-Fi password, have the app installed on your phone, and think about which circuits you'd like to monitor. This can do 16. I've opened, some electrical panels have like 40 circuit breakers, so you're not likely to be able to get all of those. So think about which ones are most likely the ones you want to track. And what I tell folks when you're thinking about which circuits you'd like to track, to think about the things that turn themselves on and off, things like a refrigerator, a freezer, dehumidifier, water heater, air conditioner, these things that they've got thermostats, they've got their own controls, they turn themselves on and off. And it's hard for us to know when they're either not functioning correctly or something has changed and they're using a lot more power. Things like your electric range, it's really nice to know. It's kind of curious how much it's using, but that's not something that just sits there on, for a long time, and we don't know about it. This goes inside your breaker box. You can see these little white things clip around. Those are called CTs, stands for current transformer. And you don't have to wire them in. Here, I'll show you. I've got one here. So these just, they just clip open and clip around the wire. The only wiring that needs to happen is this, the little diagram on the right. It's the power that goes into the unit itself. That's where it measures the power. That's how it gets the voltage of the system. The current transformers, you're going to have one on each of the mains. And then I've got a little bit of, information here. When stuff in your house is wired, if it's wired from the main to the neutral, it's 120 volts. If it's wired from one main to the other, that's 240 volts. The 240 volts are going to be things like your electric range, your water heater, air conditioner, stuff like that. Lights, outlets, your regular circuits are going to be the 120 volt circuits. And the other thing you want to pay attention to, when you're in there is, you'll notice there's two different kinds of breakers. You got the ones that's, like you can see in the picture here, it looks like two breakers, but there's one handle. They're kind of connected to each other. Those are double pole breakers. Those are on your 240 circuits. And then the single pole breakers, which, are going to be everything else. It's also a good idea to have a recent electric bill when you're installing this, so that you can configure to match your electric bill. You can put in, like here, my electric rate is 11.34 cents per kilowatt hour. And the other thing you want to get from your electric bill is the date that the meter is read. Most of them it's the same day every month. So find out what day of the month your bill is read, your meter is read, because then we'll put that date into the app, and then that way, when we're looking at our energy use for the month, it'll match or really closely match our electric bill. Before I get too much into the how to use the energy monitor itself, I want to talk a little bit about what is energy. It's funny, when we first started the Vernon County Energy District, I was sitting here thinking, okay, we're starting an energy district, and if somebody comes up to me and says, what is energy? It's like, well, I kind of know, but I didn't know how to put it in words. So this definition on the left, it comes from Wikipedia. So, energy is the quantitative property that's transferred to a body or a physical system, recognizable in the performance of work, usually heat and light, and making things move. Those are the things that we usually use energy for. So when I put this in English, energy is the stuff that does work. It usually moves things, heats things, or turns into light. In this last part here where it says it's a at the beginning here where it says it's a quantitative property, that means it can be measured. We can put a number to it. And energy isn't created or destroyed, it's just converted from one form to another. For example, we've got gasoline. When it's burned, it releases energy. A common, term that we use, you hear quite often, people hear, is the term BTUs. That is a unit of energy. That's one way of measuring energy. This is one it's easy for me to wrap my head around. It's the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit. So, if I've got a teapot, a kettle that has, 3 pounds of water in it, and it's at 50 degrees out of my faucet, I could pretty easily do the math and calculate how many BTUs it would take to boil that water. So power is not the same thing as energy. And don't feel bad because people mix these terms up all the time. I even hear folks, utility professionals who know better, throw the terms around interchangeably a lot of time. But power is basically how quickly that energy is being transferred to something. It's how much energy is moved, and it's based usually over a period of time. So when we're talking about energy and power and electricity, quite often the term kilowatts is usually the term we use when we're talking, in our house, and energy, solar panels, things like that. Those are always measured in kilowatts. 1 kilowatt is equal to 1,000 watts. Okay, and then energy is expressed as kilowatt hours. So it's 1 kilowatt. A thing that's 1 kilowatt running for 1 hour is a kilowatt hour. A microwave oven in general is usually around 1 kilowatt of power. It takes about 1,000 watts to run a microwave. So if you had something in the microwave and it was running for 1 hour, your electric bill would show 1 kilowatt hours worth of energy use. Or likewise, if you had a 100 watt light bulb, if you have 10 of them, if you have one of those running for 10 hours, you'll have 1 kilowatt hour of electricity as well. 100 watts times 10 hours is 1,000 watts per, so that's your kilowatt hour. And just for comparison's sake, 1 kilowatt hour of energy is equal to 3,412 BTUs. Don't worry, you don't have to remember that. There won't be a test. But it is helpful to have that comparison. And likewise, 1 gallon of gas contains about 33.7 kilowatt hours worth of energy as well. Any questions so far? Okay, so let's talk about, so in the app, I can look at, once I've got my energy monitor installed, I've got the app set up, I've got it configured, now I can start looking in this app and I can see how much all my circuits are using. Here I'm showing, I can look at seconds, which is basically real-time energy use. Or I can look at longer time frame. The one on the right is showing for the month view. When I'm looking at seconds or minutes, it's actually going to show me power. You may notice up at the top here, my freezer on the left, it's drawing 0 watts, and you can see where it dropped off. So it had been running and then it turned off. On the right here, this was in October. Up to this point in October, I had used 5.32 kilowatt hours of energy on our freezer as well. Can anybody make a guess why our monthly use of our freezer looks like it does? You can see here in the winter, the energy use is real low, yet in the summer, it's real high. The reason is it's out on a 3-season porch. So in the winter, it's cold, the freezer doesn't have to work as hard. In the summer, it's hotter, the freezer does work a lot harder. So this is the type of pattern I would expect, with where our freezer is located. If I saw a pattern like this and our freezer was in the basement, I'd be doing some digging to figure out what's going on, because the temperature in our basement is much more constant. Looking at the month view is, I found it's the best way when I'm trying to analyze the energy use of a device. How much does this use over a period of time? How well is it running? Things like your refrigerator and water heater. If you're going to go to the store and look at the yellow Energy Star sticker on any of your appliances, that yellow sticker will tell you how much energy per year this device would typically use. And by looking at a month view, I can see how my things are doing and multiply that out and get a good idea how it compares. When I look at this is showing our water heater, and the view on the left, I found the hourly view is really helpful for trying to figure out when my stuff is running. You can see here our water heater pretty much runs during the day. In the evening, 8 p.m., 3 a.m., during the evening, it's not running. That's because I've kind of programmed it to run when the sun is shining, when our solar panels are making electricity. It's a heat pump water heater, so I can do that. But then on the right, I can see, each month, how much energy overall is it using. And when we think about how much energy our stuff is using, for most of us with our electric bill, this is really the only, like I say, this is the only lever we have to pull. I can use less energy and my bill will go down. I use more energy, my bill will go up. So if I use less energy, generally what that means is the power company is going to burn less fossil fuel to produce that energy. I give usually, because some of us have solar panels and renewables are kicking in, so there are more renewables available on the grid. But typically, using less energy means we will burn less fossil fuel. And usually the only way we can reduce our bill is by using less energy. Taking a step back and thinking about the overall grid, how much energy we use doesn't have as much of an impact on the size of the grid, the size of the wires that go past our house, the size of the transformers. That's less a function of energy. Those things are more a function of the power. When your stuff is running, for some folks, this can be a good way to save money. Some utilities offer time of use rates where you can get your electricity for much cheaper off peak. When demand is low, they'll sell it to you for a lot less. When demand is high, the price is higher. Or folks who have solar power, this is, when your stuff is running, I want to consume it when my solar panels are making electricity, instead of selling it to the power company and buying it back later. By running our stuff off peak, by reducing the overall power demand, this does reduce, the impact on the grid. If we can balance the grid out and use stuff more when demand is low, or use it when the sun is shining, these are the types of things that really do, reduce the number of power plants that need to be built. This reduces, that we don't need as big of wires if we're not hitting those big peak draws. Those wires and the transformers need to be able to handle the highest energy use. And so, or the highest power use, excuse me. See, I did it. So by monitoring when our stuff runs, we can have a more even load on the grid, which will make for a much smaller grid. Some of the things that I found that I can control the timing of when they run, things like your clothes washer, dishwasher, dryer, most of those have, on the dial when you go to run them, you can delay your clothes start up to 12 hours. So you could put something in at noon and say 12 hours later, and it'll start running at midnight. A lot of dishwashers have that as well. Dryers, those have a lot of things built in to just automatic. You can set it pretty easily to delay. Our water heater, you're starting to see some of these new water heaters, which are smart water heaters. And at first I'm thinking, why would you need a smart water heater? But when you think about it in terms like this, a smart water heater is really nice. You can raise the temperature a bit when electricity is cheap, so it banks the hot water when the price of energy is low, and then you can lower the temperature when the electricity is higher, and then it doesn't run then. EV chargers are also super simple to program to use off peak and at cheaper times. Every EV I know of in the car, it's built in. You just sit down in the car and tell it when you want to run your stuff and when you want to have it not run. The other thing that I found, the energy monitor is really great for is find, how's my stuff running normally from one month to the next, but also how does that compare to newer, more efficient appliances? For example, if I can, if my refrigerator is 10 years old, I can look and see how much is it using now. And then I can go to, the Energy Star website, or even, a lot of Home Depot's website. I know it's pretty easy. You can bring up and look at a refrigerator and click on, and you'll get the Energy Star label, can see exactly what that fridge would use. So we can see how ours compare to the newer, more efficient stuff, which will help us decide when it's time to do an upgrade. I'm going to break out of the slideshow now and just kind of show you a little bit in the app what this looks like. So can you guys see my my screen okay? Can you still see the app?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. So this is showing right now my month's use, month to date so far. So this is my electric bill gets read on the 26th. So I've got 7 days left on this month view. And you can see pretty easily here. Our heat pump used $46 worth of electricity so far this month to heat our house. Our water heater used $4 worth of power. Remember when I told you these energy monitoring smart plugs? I've got our refrigerator plugged into one. And this is showing, so far this month, my refrigerator's used 59 cents worth of electricity. I can also use that smart plug to automatic. Obviously, I'm not going to turn our fridge off right now, but I can do this to turn whatever's plugged into that smart plug on and off. Another nice thing to know about these energy monitoring smart plugs is you're able to schedule them. So you can set a schedule that automatically turns stuff on at a certain time and then automatically turn it off at a certain time. One of the folks that we had done a energy coaching session with last year, I gave her this, and then when she started explaining what it did, and she right away went online and ordered 4 more because she was on a time of use plan for her utility, and lived in this big old Victorian house and used window air conditioners. And what she would do is run those air conditioners overnight when the electricity was less expensive, cool the house down, and then during the day she kept everything closed up, and her house still stayed comfortable all throughout the day. So she took 4 of these and put one on each of her window unit air conditioners and programmed them to automatically turn on when the power got cheaper and turn off when the power got expensive. And that way she didn't have to remember and run around the house and do it, at that certain time. So yeah, and the other nice thing where these work together with the energy monitor, you can see this circuit here that I've got called hot plate / fridge. That's the circuit breaker, the circuit from our breaker box. Both of those are on the same circuit. And then I've got the fridge plugged into the energy monitor in that circuit. And so what I've done is I've told the app that my fridge is plugged into the hot plate / fridge circuit. So this 59 cents is what the refrigerator used. The $3.75 is what everything else used. So it automatically, removes anything that is, subbed under that. For most of my day in and day out, when I'm looking at this, I can change the unit of measurement. So like when I'm comparing to the bill, I want to see it in currency. But for most of my day in and day out, looking at it, I've got it displaying watts or kilowatts. So right now, one of our, this is real time right now. Our solar panels are making 5.2 kilowatts of power. Our EV charger is drawing 2.8 kilowatts, 2.9. I can actually hear my heat pump is running right now, so it's drawing 1.5 kilowatts. It's funny, I look at this quite often because sometimes I'll hear a little buzzing or something. I'm like, what is running? And this is a really easy way for me to figure that out. And then I can easily jump around to the month view. One of the other things I like to see, so I can compare from one month to the next. So I can go back and see my February usage for each of these circuits. That also comes in with the graph as well. So like here, for example, if I look at our heat pump, and now I can see the monthly usage. We just got it in October, so you can see that looks like a pretty normal curve, what I would expect for winter use. So, all right, are there any questions? Anybody have anything they'd like to ask about or point out? Yeah, so Harry in the chat pointed out that these are important, the power companies and university researchers, energy department. One of the things that we like about this app, I am going to bring up another screen real quick. These folks have what they call a partner portal and a partnership program where folks who get their energy monitors through us as an energy district, we can record the serial number of that energy monitor, and then we aggregate their data. And so this is a little app we put together using that aggregated data. So we've got about 72 energy monitors right now that are feeding this. You can see, yesterday, this is midnight, this is noon, and this is midnight, and that's yesterday. So you can see the peak in the morning at 8 a.m., see the peak in the evening at 7 p.m., everybody's solar panels, how that generation was going. I'm going to actually turn off the mains and the solar, and let's look at. So here you can see this is how folks' electric water heaters performed yesterday. And then if I aggregate it over 90 days, so this is the average use for each time over those 90 days. You can see at 9 in the morning, 8, 9 in the morning, that's when electric water heaters are running. Makes sense. People get up, they take a shower, they leave for work. Once they've taken their shower, now their water heater's cold, that's when it kicks on and runs. Likewise, in the evening, that happens, folks get home, other people get home and take their shower after work, or the kids get baths at night. So yes, this is really helpful data. And we're using some of this aggregated data as we talk to some of the utilities in our county. And I'd like to encourage more time of use programs. Not a lot of our utilities have them, and this is one way that we can hopefully get them to implement them, so folks can have another level to push to save money. Any other questions? John, you've got something.
Ella, 2 questions. One is there any limit to how many of these energy monitoring aggregations you can do? We're going to be responsible for tracking energy across a whole slew of households where we're going to be doing energy efficiency improvements. And we'd like to do exactly what you've done, is monitor before and after energy use and aggregate it so we can see what the total effect of the program was. Sure,
you bet. That's a great use for these things. I am not aware of any limits on that. It's a partner portal. We can log in and I can see them all. Luckily, one of the guys who works with us is a pretty good Python programmer, and he wrote the code that grabs the data and puts it into a database for us, so that so this graph and stuff isn't built in. That's something we custom made. But we've got the code now. So if you guys did a similar program, we'd be happy to share it and can help you get set up to use it. Yep, you bet.
Second question is, there are some households that have some fairly complex metering. For example, some of the all-electric houses being built now have as much as, instead of 200 amp circuits, they've got 600 amp circuits, and they're coming maybe into 3 different boxes. Is this monitoring sophisticated enough that you can put one in each box and it aggregates it?
It is. It's very flexible. You may run into a situation where aggregating it isn't possible, but I've not seen those yet. I've actually got 3 of them at my house, and I can show you that. So we've got one in the barn, because that's where our solar panels are. That's where the main, that's where our power from the grid comes in. It goes into the breaker box in our barn. Then from there, our garage is a sub panel, and then actually our house is a sub panel off of that. And so these are all, this net usage is correctly calculated based on having those set up like that. Like in the case where they were all like at the meter split out to separate boxes, it may just appear as 3 separate units. I'm not sure how you would combine those to say, here, this is one household. But I do know you can, like in the case of a breaker box where, say, you've got 40 breakers, you'll have one energy monitor that's connected to the mains and 16 circuits, and then you could put in a second energy monitor and monitor another 16 circuits. That second monitor wouldn't connect to the mains, but you would just say it is a sub, it's nested under the other one. So then all that use would would get aggregated correctly. So sometimes you got to do a little figuring, and and these guys have pretty decent tech support. You can send them an email and they respond fairly quickly. Actually, I just sent them one yesterday because I had a question about a few of the folks who we've put these in have their Wi-Fi turn off at night, so their Wi-Fi is off for like 8 hours and then it comes back on, and the system can only internally store about 15 minutes worth of the electric, of their use. But my question was, what of the bigger counters are some of those still counted? Like, so the monthly and yearly use, is that still going to be accurate even if it was offline for 8 hours every night? I'm still trying to clarify. But the guy responded like 5 minutes after I sent in the request. So they're pretty good at responding.
Other questions
Now,
out there?
these circuits, the controls where you could schedule when a circuit is on and off, those only can be done with the smart plugs. Is that correct?
Right. So the energy monitor itself won't turn things on and off. The only things that the two things I know of that they have so far is the smart plugs, and they also sell EV chargers, and so their energy monitor. So, like for example, you could, if you've got solar panels, you can set the system up to charge your car to use the excess solar instead of pushing it off to the grid. And they are working with some other third-party things. There are certain thermostats that will work with the system. So they are. I'm seeing more and more integrations with them. I've actually got a system in my house where it's kind of a little more homegrown. It reads from my energy monitor, my use, and then this thing interfaces with a lot of our smart devices and turns them on and off. Because of the way my electric utility is set up, we really have a good financial incentive to use our power when it's being generated. The closer I could keep my meter to zero, both directions, the better off I am. Don't sell it to them and don't buy it from them. So, which, if you think about it, for somebody who's got solar, who's just installing solar, it seems very unfriendly, the utility policy, and it kind of is. But when I think about it, it's really very much preparing when we add batteries. If I can run my stuff when the sun is shining, we'll be able to run our household on a much smaller battery system because we won't need to store that energy for overnight.
Are there other questions out there?
Al, do you have a contract with Emporia where you can buy these at a lower cost? Do they have nonprofit purchase prices, those kinds of things?
They have, you can get a volume discount. So I can send you the email to Cade, who's their business development guy. I can send you his email address, John, and you can contact, get a hold of him, and they can set up an account. I don't, unless it's something new, they didn't have any special breaks for nonprofits, but they do. You can get this partner portal and then get bulk pricing. And if you buy, the bulk pricing depends on how many units you buy. So, I think if you get about 15 units, if I remember right, the price comes down about 15%. If you bought 100 units, it would get even lower. And even, and they're great to work with because, last year we were talking with one of the schools. They were considering putting in EV chargers at the school, and Emporia was willing to work with us on a deal for the school to give them a decent break on it. So, yeah. Yeah, and their company, they're out of Colorado, so they're a U.S. company. Yeah,
Great.
anyway, give myself a note. I'll email you kids' information, John.
Thanks.
Are there other questions out there? Well, thank you, Al.
You're welcome. One of the things maybe before I sign off, I'd just like to point out. About 3 weeks ago, the guy who works with us who did this Python programming, he's a statist. His job is in statistics, and he compared 1 year's, when folks got their energy monitor, their first year with the energy monitor, how much electricity they used, and then the following year. So we've got a few houses that have had 2 years worth, like 50 of these houses have had them in for 2 years. And what we found was those houses, their energy use dropped by about 30%, which is it's interesting because the Focus on Energy in Wisconsin had done a study with one of the utilities where they put energy monitors in homes, and they didn't find anywhere near that kind of reduction. But my takeaway from that is that with an energy district, you've got you're getting twofold. One, here's the energy monitor with some information that's going to help you make decisions. And then two, you've got an energy district that's doing research, doing education. So now we're helping people know what to do with that information. And I think the two together is it's a pretty good 1-2 for, making a really big difference.
Great. Well, thank you, Al. We'll post this on our YouTube page probably sometime tomorrow, and then I will also send this out to everyone who registered for the webinar. So thank you, Al. Very much appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Good fun.
See ya.